for that presentation. I'm really excited to bring Troy on. Troy, how's it going today?
It's going good. Sending positive vibes to everybody.
Awesome. Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is your second time presenting at Glorium Technologies.
Yes, it is my second time. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, I co-hosted the last event you were at, so that was a great presentation. I'm really looking forward to this one. A lot of the things that you're going to be talking about are things that I get excited about. So, without further ado, I'll let you kind of take the mic and if you want to introduce yourself and kind of start your presentation. Thanks, Troy.
Sure. I'll just dive right into it. I hope y'all don't mind. There's not enough time in the day. Let's just get right to it. Hopefully, you can see my slide. I believe you can. Let's make this stuff happen. Building a custom growth engine for sustainability and scalability. So let's get right to the point. Do you want to grow? Well, I'm assuming if you're here, if you're watching live, watching the replay, having the audio while you're doing the things, of course you want to grow. Most people will say they want to grow. Who doesn't want to grow? Such a simple question. And yet, actions speak louder than your words. So what does your actions say about your desire to grow? Can you be honest with yourself in this moment after the current speakers you've already heard and the speakers you will hear for the rest of the day and day two? I want you to really think about in this moment, are you doing the necessary critical actions in order for you to grow? Full stop. Full stop. You will see this more than once, so get used to it. It's meant to be a swerve and reflect and challenge. A hard stop, a hard pause. Are the odds in your favor to scale or fail? I believe in truth trajectory. Troy, what is truth trajectory? Basically, you can only go as far as you're honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself about your situation, about your business, about your marketplace, about your opportunities, about your strengths, your weaknesses, your competition, and everything else, how in the world do you expect to scale? So be truthful. No cap. Be truthful with your trajectory. Be truthful with your business and yourself in this moment. Many times in startups, but in just businesses in general, we can typically really get into this mode where we just are desensitized to the reality to a point we'll create our own reality and not deal with the hard truths. So what are the hard truths, Troy? The hard truth is only 10% of startups are successful. But if you're a startup, you probably already know that. And only 80% of startups survive after year one. Well, that's doom and gloom. How does that make you feel? I'm big on emotional intelligence because based off how you feel and how you perceive yourself, how you position your mind, your business, despite this data saying you're going to fail potentially, all depends on that. And if we're thinking about jumping ahead here, how to build a growth engine, how to scale, how to really penetrate the market and own the market, and maybe if your final bottom line is to sell or to just continue to scale and scale up, it all comes down to your mind. And that's being truthful with yourself. So even though only 10% of startups are successful, you're playing with house money, baby. So you might as well do it. If you're telling me that I have a high chance of failure anyway, just walking in the door, that means everyone's equal. So therefore, why don't I just put in the work, put in the effort, and make this happen? So you can't grow if you don't believe. Again, you think about what was in Michael Seeker's stuff. It was belief. It was believing in yourself. Again, big Matrix fan over here. You have to believe in yourself to make things happen. And therefore, belief powers the engine. Now, I'm not a woo person. I'm not a big Disney, trying to fill it in. But I'll be really honest here, is that with your emotional intelligence and your belief, if you don't have those things in alignment, you can't grow. You can't lead, you can't hire effectively, you can't create efficient culture, and you can't drive the funds, drive the investors, drive the community to get your business, to get your startup to where you want it to be. So why do you need a growth engine? So I'm big on definitions and everything else. Growth is where the business reaches the point for expansion. And an engine is a machine used to change the energy into movement. So consistent movement creates opportunity. And if you're not moving as fast, you can do it by yourself, sure. But at a certain point, you're going to have to build a system and a series of systems to get you there. And so your growth engine may consist of a sales engine, a content engine, a marketing engine, but those are just some. There could be a plethora of other sub-engines within your growth engine to get you to where you need to be. But the key focus is to focus on building systems to keep conversations and content flowing in order for connections and conversions to occur. And being the growth strategist that I am, many times people see strategy as a one-off thing, when strategy is a living, breathing thing. If you look at any NBA team, the team could be doing well. The team's going well. They just don't get rid of the coach. The coach is there the entire time to see you through to the championship. In the same way, growth strategy is your coach. It's that match to building the system and setting it on fire. So automation plus activation equals accumulation. Are you convicted in your MVP? Do you believe there is demand for the solution for your ICP, your minimum viable product, and your ideal customer or client profile? Do you believe in that? That the demand and the solution? And are you convicted of it? Because many times I talk with startups, we talk in these different groups all the time, and they focus on the competition and their MVP and driving it out. But sometimes they're not convicted in it. They don't fully believe in it. And I do believe there's a certain way that you have to manifest your belongingness, your position in your ideal marketplace with your particular product or service or deliverable in order for you to be successful in that. And so how do we align ourselves to answer these two questions? And also, how do we position ourselves to really create that growth engine customizable for us? And if you've been to the previous one that I was a part of, then you're going to know this familiar framework, the Clover framework. And it's about clarity, leverage, optimization, vision and value, execution, and results. What we've already talked about was really about the clarity of things. Okay, we know that the odds are against us. We're playing with house money. They say we're going to fail. I'm desensitizing myself to that because I want to be in the 10% that does succeed. Now, on top of all that, I want to make sure that I'm growing and scaling. I want to have the right mindset. I want to have the right team. I want to have the right culture. All that comes down to clarity, right? And then the next thing on top of all of that is you want to leverage. You want to leverage your time. You want to leverage all the different things around you. Optimization, vision, value. And, vision and value is so important, particularly with startups compared to other businesses, especially when you're starting on your early stage, is because you're literally selling a Post-it note. You're selling a vision that hasn't come to fruition yet to your investors, to funders, to a community, to a team. Maybe they're coming in with equity, all the different things. You're literally creating this vision and hoping that the vision isn't enough to create enough value, to create enough demand for them to be on board so you can leverage based off your clarity to execute and get the results that you want. And I apologize, I have the air conditioners too loud, so I'm trying to survive on that. But again, I want to go a little bit deeper into the Clover framework. Be clear about your goals and your why, and also with that, be clear about your MVP, be clear about your marketplace, be clear about where you want to go and where you don't want to go. Obviously, leverage your time and resources wisely. Never stop optimizing for anybody. I don't care if you're really scaling, never stop optimizing. Manifest your vision in exchange for value. We're doing this dance, whether you're with your investors, whether you're with your board, whether you're with your funders, whether you're with your team, there's a dance of value. And sometimes we have to make sure we're receiving enough value back as we're giving. Because if we give out too much as people who lead startups or are part of a startup, the burnout rate is astronomical. So you must make sure that you're in alignment, that you're getting enough value to fill up your well to go along with your execution for everything. And obviously, the name of the game is results. No excuse, just produce. That's it. That's all. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up in the ideology of what we're building, but we don't align that and measure that with our results. And ask yourself, is your current KPIs or OKRs practical? Do they make sense? Are they in alignment with justifying your progress? We don't want to be in a situation where we're on a hamster wheel and we're not moving effectively down the road. That really comes down to making sure that you're getting the results that you need. And once you get them, we're on to the next thing. Celebrate, do what you need to do, reset, go get it again. Now, the quickest route to success is a straight line. A straight line is simple. So we need to embrace the power of simplicity. I speak in simple terms. I'm a simple guy. I don't know every acronym. I don't know all the jargon. I don't have every connection. But I do know is that when you keep things as simple as possible and can speak on what you know, produce on what you know, people can resonate with it. They can align with it. They can be an advocate for it, an evangelist for it, and they'll buy it. Because when things are as simple as state in the mind, people have less friction. Therefore, they can make quicker decisions. The quicker the decision, the quicker the buy, the quicker the sell, the quicker the output. And all that comes down to being simple. And most startups, generally most businesses, are not embracing simplicity enough. Tell me, you use this software, you get this CRM product, you do all these different things, you pay for ads, and you just dump money into it. 50K, 100K, 500K, $1 million a year, whatever the ratio equivalent to where you are in your startup or your business is. And you just run with it. And you're doing all these different things, but is it moving the needle? Or are you just staying busy to stay busy? I'd rather be productive instead of being busy. And to avoid the high of always being busy but never getting anywhere is keeping things as simple as possible. Put your key goals on a sticky note. That's your key goals. That's how we're going to move. That's how we're going to do these things. Full stop. Kind of talked about this already. But I want to dive a little bit deeper for my own sanity and to really bring it to the next level here. What many startups focus on: go to market as quickly as possible. They want to jump to scaling. They may be too lean to a fault. And obviously, they just want to sell. Well, most startups should focus on testing their go-to-market strategy, then making sure they can sustain a high-quality output, then scaling that output for they can scale their growth, then stabilize that, then simplify it, becoming more lean, and then if your output is to sell, then sell. What's the difference between this one and this one? And I'm going to just say it like this. Focus on sustainability first, then scale second. You understand that the relevancy of time for a startup is completely different than a lot of other situations. And so, yeah, I get it. You want to grow and you want to take the metrics and have the report that says your value is at this point now and at these things. But if you can't make sure that what your operations and what you're doing has a capacity to output at that level genuinely beyond just what's on the paper or what someone has evaluated you as, that means your foundation is probably built on toothpicks versus being built on cement. And so if we go a step back, the difference, if you're trying to move as quickly as possible, you're going to cut corners. Now, I'm all about being lean and doing as much as you can. If you're bootstrapping or you're Series A or whatever thing you're on with funding, I understand you have to make decisions and cut corners in certain regards or cut costs in certain regard or wait till you get another series of funding or demand or sales to make your moves, whatever phase you're in. However, don't fall into the trap where you're just trying to scale now, and you don't have a foundation to stand on. And that's why it's very critical that you test your go-to-market strategy. And you can have a sustainable output from that. Then scale. So again, sustainability first, scale second. Now, another thing I want to talk about, this is very critical, is about the 4 currencies for you to be successful as a startup. And no, I'm not talking about crypto. So I won't bore you with anything like that. The 4 currencies I'm talking about is time, money, knowledge, and skill. We battle with these four things all the time. And when you're entering into the startup world, you have maybe one or a few of these things, but you probably don't have all of these things in abundance or where you want it to go. You maybe have enough time, but you don't have enough money. So you're probably bootstrapping or you're waiting for your next series round funding. Maybe you have the skill, but you don't have the full knowledge of all the things involved to make your startup successful. Or maybe you have the knowledge, but you don't have the time because you're working a full-time job while you're trying to develop and scale your startup. Obviously, we can have all four and unlimited powers, we would. It's like the 99 on NBA 2K. We want 99 stat in all four, but that's not reality. But that doesn't mean you still can't tap into all four currencies to position your startup for success. If you have money, you can hire other individuals, whether it's freelancer contractors or bring people on, to take some of your load off to free up more time for you to spend time elsewhere. If you have money, again, you can pay for more knowledge to get the education, to get the understanding, to get the connections, to get the mentors or the coaches necessary to give you the direction for you to do that, or to even improve your skill. Same thing, vice versa. If you don't have the money, but you have the time, I convert my time as a barter for skill, and then that skill for knowledge. And there's unlimited combinations of how you're going to move about this. But it's very critical in this moment to really process and ask yourself, for you to take on something, if you're a few or one of many, how are you implementing your time? Is it worth your time? Is it worth spending your money? And maybe you can do it, but it may not be expedient for you to do it because your time could be spent elsewhere. Or if you're going to double down and do that, do you have the sincere skill to make it successful? Maybe you brought it to a certain point and now things have changed. You have to measure yourself against these currencies and make sure that it's in alignment for you to be at your most optimal state. Now, something people always want to talk about and project: hypergrowth, which is the rapid expansion where your compound annual growth rate is at least 40% or higher, above what you even projected for the year. Everybody wants to achieve hypergrowth. Everybody wants to expand and do what they need to do. Of course, who wouldn't? To get to hypergrowth, obviously, managing your foreign currencies, focus on sustainability, and then scaling, all that comes into play in this critical moment. But to go a little bit further, there's 6 phases to hypergrowth, in my personal opinion: investigation, initiation, integration, implementation, innovation, and introspection. I want to investigate the market. If I don't understand my marketplace, if I don't understand the competition, if I don't understand the lay of the land, how can I make moves? How can I make calculated decisions? Initiation, I want to initiate my thoughts, test things out, see what's going on. Let me just try things out in the market. Let me see what's happening, right? Then after that, you want to integrate yourself in there, integrate your product, your service, integrate the methodology, the culture with your team, then implement, take action. From that, we innovate. And everyone wants to throw around the word innovate, and I get it. It's a common word. It might be overly used, but it still has its place in everything. And that requires you to have introspection. Is that as you're growing or failing or ups and downs, you have to understand, what's my mental and EQ, mental and emotional state? What's the state of my team? What's the state of my customer? Introspection, because that's going to be that reset to then reinvestigate and start the process all over again. Now, we all want a few things. We want funding. We want customers. We want demand. We want growth. We want authority. We want press. We want revenue. We want ROI. And we want a little bit of RESPCT, respect. So we all want all of these things. And we all can get all of these things. But how do we do it, though? How do we do it? How do we make perception of our product reality? How do we attract and convert our ideal customer or client profile? How do we drive demand? No, how do we own demand, right? And how do we increase conversions? We think back to the growth engine. It's all about the system to drive content and conversations to get those conversions so you can get the money and the growth and success that you want. How do we do all these things? And again, I'm all about simplicity. It's not rocket science. What I'm saying is nothing you don't know, but in many cases, you're not implementing accordingly because there's just too much noise in the room. So let's just take the noise out of the room and focus on what we can do. And that's being direct, be authentic, be resourceful, and being tactical. Whether you're trying to get funding, whether you're trying to get customers, whether you're trying to get board members, whether you're trying to get mentorship and coaching, customers, clients, all the different things, it still requires you to have these 4 things activated and in play. Being direct, be authentic, be resourceful, and being tactical. And so to be direct, you got to be direct in communication. If perception is reality and reality is truth, and you want to own that truth and make truth manifestation what you want, people respect people who can communicate very direct. And sometimes that's understanding your weaknesses. I have a tendency that in many cases, I want to overload information. And so that's my tendency. Simplify it, say less, pause, and wait. If you don't say as much or you're timid with your voice, tap into a different personality, if you will, to make sure you want to be who you can be to make this happen. So it's kind of like maybe you're the Clark Kent and you want to switch to being Superman. Or if you're Bruce Wayne guy, I'm more of a Bruce Wayne guy myself, I want to switch to being Batman. In either case, I need to tap into that place, applying Clover and now implementing Dart to be direct in my communication, to ask, to challenge, to tell, to entertain. And I think people sleep on that component of challenge. If you're breaking into a marketplace, if you're new, if you're not established, or you're comparing yourself, to your next competitor, you're trying to get that hyper growth status, that next level status for your next series of funding, whatever the goals and the phase might be, you really need to make sure you're at a place where you're comfortable with making challenges. Yeah, there's enough room for all of us in Sky to Fly, but at the same time, I want to own my spot. I want to keep my spot, and I want to grow my spot. So I want to challenge. That's being simple, being clear, being relevant, and also being clever. Being authentic in your message, it's all about sharing the truth. I don't want to hide too much about behind the reporting or the speculation of what is. Sometimes the way to get that next $10 million is simply asking for it. And Troy, I know, it's just that's just okay, yeah, duh. But sometimes we can get so lost in all these noise, all these slide decks and slides and everything else that we just don't get right to the point. Be transparent, honest, and upfront. Be resourceful. I don't know any startup, if they really are growing, if they're not resourceful. And kudos to you for doing this because you have to be resourceful. It is absolutely critical for you to be resourceful. And it's not just, managing your cash flow and watching your margins. It's also making sure you're doing what you need to do to scale and grow abundantly. And lastly, being tactical in your execution. As we're talking about the growth engine, activate strategies, build systems, develop tactics to do what you need to do. Again, full stop. Full stop. I'm stopping because I want to make something very clear. To create opportunities, you need conviction, commitment, consistency, and confidence. 4 C's that you need to really make this happen. And if you notice, as we come on this way, when we talked about belief and this in the engine, and we talked about Clover, clarity, leverage, optimization, vision of value, execution, and results, and we talked about Dart and everything else, that still leads into being the conviction in your MVP, convicted in your business, convicted in yourself and your team, being committed and consistent in your reaching out to outbound, to reaching out to investors, reaching out to really building that customer, building that brand authority, building that positioning and presence, and being confident enough that when things are rocky, you still can do what you need to do. These 4 things at its core are going to be the differentiator between the startups that succeed that you see a year from now and the ones that are going to shut down in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, we've heard in previous presentations that I've been enjoying on and off so much, and something that really landed with me in the last one was really talking about, COVID and how in many ways COVID was that catalyst. And that catalyst, if we go back to full stop, that catalyst created, hey, you're either going to make a decision or you're not. And so when you're in the trenches, when you're listening to these speakers and you're taking notes and you're absorbing this information, align it with yourself to make sure that you are convicted, that you are committed, that you're consistent and you're confident. And if you're not, True Trajectory, hold yourself accountable to it. Now, a few questions I want to ask you. If your funding dries up, do you have secondary resources you can turn to? If someone beats you to market, how can you plan to be better? And if your MVP isn't working, what can you pull from it to pivot to another direction? I ask these questions because sometimes we don't think about, yeah, Troy, you said we're playing with house money. I'm convicted, I'm committed, I'm consistent, I'm confident. Let's go. I'm going to be direct, be authentic, resourceful, and tactical. All these things is great, right? Building a growth engine is great. Penetration of the market, doing what you do best, awesome. But what if it takes a sidestep? Are you still going to be as committed, as convicted, as consistent, and as confident to adjust and adapt, always do all possible things accordingly to make it happen? That's that we get all hyped up from a Gary Vee conversation, and then we go back home and the reality hits and it gets real quiet for a minute. That doesn't mean you still can't be hyped up about it and do what you need to do, but we got to attack these tough questions. We got to know how we're going to make these moves accordingly. So you hear all the time now, disrupting the market, right? Let's disrupt the market. Let's make the change. Let's make the difference. Well, we need to rethink the way we are entering and doing and selling if we want to disrupt the market. Now, some things outside of our control will automatically disrupt the market. What has? COVID. What has? Whether you want to say we're in a recession, we're pre-recession, we're mid, up for your debate, however you want to see that, wherever you are in the sky of clouds. But nevertheless, to disrupt requires three things. Obviously, want to launch because you can't do anything without launching anything. And then the thing that we sometimes don't do is active listen. Again, I'm all about simplicity. I can only speak on what I know, and I know that it works and it makes sense. We don't do enough active listening on what everybody is saying. Get out of your own way. This is why amazing that Glorian Technologies puts on events like this to allow us to sit and do that introspection to see where we are, analyze and adjust accordingly. But we need to listen and apply and be real with ourselves about that. Because if we're not listening to what the pain points are, we're not listening to what's happening here and there, how can we just make the calculated decisions accordingly in order for it to be a genuine disruptor in what we're doing? And then lastly, learn from it. We can learn from our competitors. We can learn from our own mistakes. I'm a believer, and this is just me, that I can observe without experience and grow accordingly. I don't have to experience every single failure, every single thing people say you should do as a startup. I can observe what other people are doing in my particular marketplace, my city, my location, whatever. And from that, adjust accordingly. So launch, listen, and learn to disrupt the market. Now that we've established that and we're talking about disrupting the market, there's 4 E's to disruption: engagement, exclusivity, experience, and emotion. Everybody makes decisions based off emotion, whether by how you've made them feel or how they feel about receiving that product or that service to solve a pain point or to create a joy point. I always have to say, are you the Tylenol or are you the chocolate cake? Now, sometimes if you're trying to solve pain, I'm that Tylenol. If you need joy, I'm that chocolate cake. And so it's understanding, positioning yourself accordingly to create that experience. And most times that experience is through exclusivity, and that exclusivity is sparked through engagement to make that emotion happen. And all from those 4 E's, you make that disruption to own your piece of the pie in the market. Now, many times, you've heard the 5 P's, but we don't lean on these 4 E's enough. It may seem simple and it may seem out of place, but it's actually in place and it's actually really relevant because everything that you're doing is requiring you to engage. And for you to be chosen, you have to provide something very exclusive that differentiates you from somebody else. And from that, you're creating that experience. Experience leads to relationships. Relationships are built off emotion. Emotion is derived by trust. So if I trust you and we have that emotional connection, because now we have this established relationship from a positive experience that you exclusively gave to me based off our engagement, you are therefore a disruptor to this individual. And that individual can now be a buyer, an advocate, an elevator, I like to say the levels of Bay, to help you grow and be successful. This is the same thing that allows you to be very calculating, intentional, and amazing in your sales output as well. And the last thing, I've shared this from the last one, I always end with this as well. It's my leads generator blueprint. These 5 things as a business you have to do, incorporating with everything else that we talked about and really establishing that growth engine to attract your ICP, to drive the value up for your MVP. And that's just to leverage language to launch. Are you speaking the right language? And if I remember what I said about active listening to be a disruptor, you must leverage language to launch. If you're not speaking the right language to someone, how do you expect to attract them? How do you expect them to buy from you? How is it going to be an evangelist for you to go back for you? The next thing is to educate and entertain to enchant. It's not enough to speak endless words of all the things that your startup does if you're not entertaining them on what the possibilities are, on what it can be to win their heart. Attract and amplify to activate. Are you a magnet or are you the bullhorn? In certain phases of your startup, you're going to be the magnet. In other phases, you're going to be the bullhorn. You can attribute that to outbound and inbound. Everyone wants to be, I don't want to go do cold calling and I don't want all these different things, but there's seasons where you have to be the bullhorn. There's seasons where you have to be the magnet. And I believe in most cases, you can always be both. And that's always to activate your ICP, to activate opportunities for press, to activate effective marketing, and to activate your growth. The last 2, they're not as big as the first 3, but I still think it's relevant to say. Dream big and distinguish yourself to drive, and share frequently and support often to shine. I said it before that there's enough room for all of us in the sky to fly. And yes, I know only 10% of us may make it, but we don't make it by ourselves. We make it through a collective group, a support group, and community to do so. And if you're not dreaming big enough and distinguish yourself enough, how do you expect to drive that disruption for you to be successful? Think of these things. Leveraging language to launch, educate, intent to enchant, attract and amplify to activate, dream big, distinguish yourself to drive, and share frequently and support often to shine in order for you to position yourself through your growth engine, applying Clover, applying Dart, applying your 4 E's, engagement, exclusivity, experience, and emotion to be the disruptor, to create the growth for your startup business to succeed. And so that's me for what I want to talk about. You can find me anywhere on Find Troy. I have a podcast out, autogress.fm. Connect with me on Find Troy, and I'm Big Guy on Twitter. Any questions?
Hey, Troy. Wow. You always bring the heat. I appreciate you.
A little too much heat in my case.
Yeah, that was awesome. I appreciate you sharing that information with us. I'm going to see if we have any questions for Troy. We have about 5 minutes. But yeah, otherwise I can ask you a question. We'll wait another minute or so. How have things been since we were last on stage together? How are things on your end?
I love that question. I think that's a phenomenal question, and thank you for asking for it. I think I've definitely achieved more growth since the last time we talked, and I think that's doubling down by really simplifying what I've been doing. The first time around, I was doing a lot. Now, to me, it still was very, very selective, but I was still doing too much. So now I've probably cut that into a third or a fourth, and now things are really refined. Things are really making sense. I'm known for something. I'm helping people do something, and it really driving the revenue, really driving the impact and the growth as well.
No, that's amazing. This is a topic I truly enjoy. I come from a growth and marketing background, and now I get to kind of host events across the country with different startup founders. And, this whole concept of building, your growth engine is something that a lot of first-time founders I've learned are like, they don't know anything about it or don't know where to look for to where to start. So question I like to ask is, if you had to give your 20-year-old self advice, of how to do a good job in this role of a growth leader, whether you're, VP of growth or director of growth, what's one piece of advice that you like that you know now that you would tell yourself at 20?
Sure. I definitely think, and this is kind of ironic, but you definitely need to act to see if things are working. When you're in your 20s, you have the runway to fail as much, as quickly, as often as you can. And you're probably young enough to get right back up as quickly as you age as well. So I definitely think, take action. In my 20s, I was very hesitant because I felt I didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't have understanding. Think about the time, money, knowledge, and skill. I had all the time in the universe, but I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough knowledge, and I was just getting started with my skill. And so that forced me to be very hesitant. And I think if I would look back at myself, take action anyway. You can use what you have to get what you need to therefore get what you want. And I think that's the critical thing that separates us from other people, is that if you look at the people who are doing the most things, yeah, we can attribute all of their growth, but nevertheless, the core things, they took action. And too many were too hesitant. And that time window of hesitation could be the difference between yours getting to market or someone else getting the market before you because you didn't take enough action.
No, I agree. I think, now as I hit the 30-year-old and I just had my first kid, I look back on like time and just like as a 20-year-old, you don't realize how much time you have and how valuable, and you value your time so much different than, now as a parent or, as a, leader of a department or team, right? The time value is a lot different. And I think for me, from a growth perspective, I think it's one of those things for me, my methodology is like you keep experimenting with what you're doing, what works, kind of double down on it, what doesn't work, kind of take it out back and either kill it or, preserve it, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, I don't think maybe it's not the right idea to do something today, but it doesn't mean that it's not right tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now.
Totally. I totally agree. And it's just about perspective. I think I have to have the same conviction like I would Michael Jordan, that I'm not going to believe the shot is going to be missed until I have to take the shot. And until that point, I'm always thinking I'm going to make that shot and win the game. And I think we don't talk enough about, and that's why I love the previous conversation as well, just about the mental capacity to manifest what you want. And so I think it's very important to do that.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you having this conversation with me. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So Troy, thanks again. Remind me, it's at Find Troy on all the socials. Connect with you offline.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be connecting with you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you sharing all that insight with us, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for having me.